something we all need. Gotta have it now if you wanna succeed. Striving, surviving, that's no doubt. Sticking together, we gon' find a way out. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your.
Good afternoon, the back community. Thank you as always for being involved. Thank you for being engaged. Guess what? We have reached the end of season 3. That's 3 long seasons in the books. Most people don't get past a certain number of episodes, and we have long since surpassed that. So thank you for staying involved. But look, now for the season 3 finale, I had to bring out the big guns, the big kahunas, Mr. Cannabis himself. I have my friend, my frat brother, Jorge Vasquez Jr., Vasquez Segarra, LLP, and we're going to be diving into everything from entertainment law to cannabis law to civil rights law, you name it. But I can't wait to dive into your story. First things first, Jorge, thank you for being on the podcast platform.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with the BAT community.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, man, I know you very well. So my very first question that I always hit you with is giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the BAT community audience, because can't nobody introduce us like ourselves. So my first official question for you is, Mr. Vasquez, please tell us what you do. Here's your opportunity to tell the BAT community more about you.
Sure. First and foremost, I'm an advocate. And in being an advocate, I'm true to myself. And in being true to myself, I can't forget where I started at. Certainly, I have formal education like most attorneys, but my real education started out in Manhattan's Lower East Side, specifically 4th Street and Avenue D. I'm a product of a single family home. Met my father when he was incarcerated. Funny enough, I was visiting my uncle. So I was with my grandmother visiting my uncle, and my fraternal grandparents were visiting my pops, and my grandmother was like, "Oh, yo, there go your pops." And that's like my earliest memory of my father. But I say that because a system is a system is a system. I grew up in public housing. I went to public school. You know, my parents have been incarcerated. Brother has been incarcerated. Sister has been incarcerated. And what I've noticed is that whether it's a penitentiary, whether it's public housing, whether it's the public school system, or whether it's higher ed, if you understand that there are certain rules within systems, you could use those rules to your advantage. It took me a while to be proud of those adversities because those adversities taught me how the system is used and how you could use the system to your benefit if you understand that these rules are applicable all throughout. So, you know, I think sometimes when I was a kid and I was like, yo, why are they trying to get on me? They want to suspend me, but I'm hearing them use some terminology, so they can't suspend me yet. They got to do something else. And then later on, I learned, well, that's the law. So, and then I see like, well, why are they treating this student more favorably? And then, you know, when I got to college, I was like, man, listen, y'all need to make an exception here. I'm looking up different things and I'm saying, you want me to take this one class, and this one class is supposed to show me X. I'm looking at this Africana Studies class. This Africana Studies class proclaims to show X as well. So I need you to take this Africana Studies class and count that towards this general class that you need me to do. And I was in the dean's office politicking with him, like, you know, open up the book, look at this page. It has the same course description, same thing. So I need you to sign off on it so that way I could get credit taking the class that I want to take versus being taught, right? Like I wanted to be educated. I didn't want to necessarily just sit in the class. And I wanted to sit in class that taught me about my history, taught me about my folks, and something that I could use later on in life. Because I think anytime you overcome anything, it presents a unique opportunity. Right. And in order for you to strike on that opportunity, you need to be strategic, right? So started out my education at the University at Albany, SUNY Albany, went there for undergrad, grad school, went to law school at Seton Hall, got an LLM at Temple, and then did a fellowship at Harvard. But again, the best education I got is from 4th Street and Avenue D, Lydian Ward Projects. And I say that because that was some of the most brilliant people I've ever came in contact with, right? Like many people just didn't have the same opportunities that I've had. But similar to you, and we've been talking about life for almost 20 years now. Many of our thought processes haven't changed. We've refined how we express them, right? But the objective of community, the objective of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a Black man, what does that mean in society? And this idea of how do we get our people to whatever is next, and how do we get ourselves to whatever is next, is stuff that we've been talking about since teenagers. Many of us before that. The difference is, as you mature, your strategy towards that execution pivots, right? You use the resources that are available, but the framework is the framework, right? So if you start with the framework of, I'm gonna look out for my people, or I'm gonna make sure my people have this space, then you just continue doing that, and that's what led me to the work that I'm doing now.
It's just like music, right? Digest the music. Something I can listen to back in 1996, I would have only been able to understand it based upon my experiences and my maturity at that time. But, I can listen to that same album or that same piece of music from then and listen to it now in 2023 and have a completely different understanding of it. So I love that you led with the fact that, you've always been an advocate even before you knew you were an advocate. And as you've learned and filled into your role as an advocate, now you have the words to articulate it in all these other different spaces.
Right. You have the tools and the resources, right, to be able to accomplish whatever that goal is, which is, it's a blessing, right? Many people don't get that opportunity. So to be able to get that opportunity, you have to take advantage of it, and make sure that you hit the ground running. And understanding many times that even if you don't know somebody, trust me, so everybody in the back community, there's folks like me, folks like Rel, who we don't know anybody from a hole in the wall. But if they're trying to do something and we can help, 9 out of 10 times we're going to help them. That other one time, it might be outside of what we do, and we're going to connect you to the person.
Facts.
But you have to try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just have to try, and that's the biggest thing I think for folks who look and say like, yo, how did you make it out of Arbor Hill? How did you make it out of Orange Street? How did you make it out of the Lower East Side? It's like, well, I didn't make it out. I'm still there. I go there. Home is home, right? Family is family, but I bring back a different energy.
Facts.
And the way you're able to bring back a different energy is going to be based on, in part, being true to yourself, but also understanding what you can't do, right? And that's a hard reality for many people.
But it is a life-changing and life-saving skill. So, it is a life-changing skill. So, I love that you said that, knowing what you can't do. I remember when I first met you, man, it was just like, actually because I first met you, but then I got your story a little bit later. And when I first got your story, I was like, man, I knew I liked Jorge for a reason, man. And it was just like, he's like, yo, Rel, man, I got war wounds for real. So, and it was just like, yo, and it's just like, so I love how even through all of your experiences, you mentioned Harvard, you mentioned Seton Hall, you mentioned dual degrees at the University of Albany, you've always stayed authentic to who you are, and that has led you to be an advocate in this new space that we're going to get into too, talking about your journey through becoming a lawyer, right? And I love how our conversations continue to grow. They continue to expand. This, you being on the platform, started from a conversation of us talking about 529s and UPMA accounts. So
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So it just shows how when you align yourself with the right things, as you are a constant student of learning, it allows you to continue to grow. But let me see. And actually, I probably don't even need to ask this question because, I wanted to ask, like, why law, right? Why law? How did you become passionate about that? But you dropped a couple of bombshells, and in the first couple of minutes, just of your first initial interaction with your pops and understanding that systematic process, the systematic process of where you lived at. But you know, it's the amount of work you have to put in to get your JD. I still got to come back to the question: why law?
I looked at history, and the one thing that you'll see in history is that people aren't treated fairly. And when you look at the law has been used as a tool to oppress some and promote or push forward others or other agendas or other initiatives. I was fortunate enough to have my great grandmother alive to 2004, and she lived to 111 years old.
Wow.
So if you did the math, she was born around 1893. If 1893, the Spanish-American War, Spain doesn't colonize Puerto Rico until well after that. So understanding that, my folks have a story prior to Puerto Rico, and understanding that, my great grandmother, darker skin than me, coarse of hair, got there the same way many other people got to the Americas. And understanding that when she went to New York for this idea of a better life for her family, they weren't met with many things that other people were met with. And seeing her, not be able, or she wasn't able to have a formal education, right? But she still was smart enough or aware enough to realize, you need to advocate. Like we're stronger together. Let's go knock on doors. Let's go do this. We need to go vote. And I would go with her to vote as a kid, and she would sign with like an X. And I was like, yo, this is just crazy. But, that taught me this idea of like, here's this brilliant woman who doesn't have a formal education, yet she's teaching the entire community. Right. And then seeing the disparities when I walked between one neighborhood and another neighborhood as a kid early on, I learned like, I gotta like walk a half a mile to get to a nice park. And if I try to play in that park, they're going to try to kick me out, even though it's a public park. That gets heightened by growing up in New York City in the early 90s, and getting stopped by police on your way to a community center, getting bothered by folks. It was just like, enough's enough. But I think what did it for me, there was a time where relatives were going through the system, and it looked like people in the street were living like the best life, like everybody had a new car, everybody had the best fits. But, I'll be in the courtroom waiting for my relative's case to come through, and I see like nobody could bail anybody out. Like they had the money, but nobody had a job. Right. So it was like, why be on the street if you have this on paper, you have all this money, right? Because I'm seeing people show off their money. I'm seeing people walk by counting their money. I'm seeing people driving cars that I know if they needed to liquidate, they could to get out of prison or get out of jail, but they didn't have anything legal, right? Like they didn't have a lawyer, but they also didn't have a job. And to me, it was like, listen, like the streets is always going to be the streets. But if you could bet on yourself and use those tools you learn from observing what's happening in your community, then you'll be unstoppable, right? But like many other people who look like us, I had to go through the idea of, am I smart enough, right? So that was like a real kind of me versus me, whereas like, yo, do I want to do this? Can I do this? And then it was like, yo, I need to do this. And I need to do this because there's too many things on the table, too many people who look like us who can't go to somebody who looks like them. And that makes the world of a difference. I litigated a case against the Suffolk County Police Department where people were stopped and robbed by the police. And I remember talking with my clients and being able to ask them questions that another attorney who didn't go through those kind of things would have not known, right? And just being able to say like, yo, okay, cool. So after they strip searched you and had you squat like a baseball catcher, what happened next, right? Without them having to tell me that, just because you know how it is. When things like, okay, like, how do you know that? Like, how did this sound? Like, yeah, I've been through it too. Like, oh, really? You? Yeah. And it's just like being able to be relatable. But I would say life experiences shaped me into becoming an attorney and understanding that there was only so much that I could do without the JD, right? I worked in education for a little bit. And many times when I would say something, it was just like, well, the attorneys created the policy. That's for the attorneys. That's for the attorneys, or that's for this. It's just like, well, if that's who's going to be the decision maker, or if that's the person who's going to be able to foster some kind of change, then that's where I need to be.
That's where I need to be. Listen, for everybody that is watching and looking for inspiration and motivation, which is why I love to have all my guests on here, man, look no further than Jorge himself, man. So we always joke about, when the Lower East Side meets Just a Kid from Arbor Hill, but to take your experiences where most of us aren't able to transition from out of those experiences, right? But to believe in change enough that you became a part of it speaks volumes of where you can get to from where you start. And like a lot of times people ask me like, well, Rel, why do you still spend so much time in Albany and stuff like that? It's just like, or why do you tell your story, right? It's like, because by the grace of God, I made it out, right? By the grace of God, I didn't get caught up to the point of where I had a record or something like that. I work for the federal government. I've been there for 17 years, right? But there's so many people that have similar stories just like me, but might have just gotten caught because they took a wrong turn. So I always tell everybody, never judge. Most of us have done things that probably could have landed us in the same places where other people are at.
Yeah, and just because somebody's inside doesn't mean that they did something, right? We understand that aspect too. And I think that's the harsh reality. I think we over police our communities, we over police schools. Many of our schools become underperforming by somebody else's standards. Then they get divided into other schools. And now you have a school that has 3-4 floors, that each floor is a different school. Some even have different sections. Left side is one school, right side is another school. Mm-hmm. Where if a kid just goes to the wrong floor, they're technically trespassing. Mm-hmm. Then you have school safety agents, many of which are part of their local law enforcement. They start chasing them, and what becomes, a fun time just cutting class, now becomes trespass, now becomes resisting arrest, now becomes
you got a record.
Other things that unfortunately for people who look like us usually doesn't end well.
Yep. Let me see, man. There's so many things I have queued up to talk to you about because one, I know 420 just passed. Cannabis law is one of the things that you and your partners work on at your firm. Congratulations to your nomination for the New Jersey awards as well. Cannabis, and there's a word I had at the tip of my tongue, I can't think about it, but for people who went to jail for cannabis, they're the first people who are able to get licenses if they're interested in doing dispensaries and stuff like that. Not necessarily the first people, but I know they have a right for that. How has it been navigating the cannabis space and legitimizing cannabis both in New York and New Jersey, and all your efforts in Albany?
So in New York, the part has been the advocate, right? And it goes back to seeing people in court, being in courtrooms, seeing what people are getting charged with, growing up in public housing, seeing people get kicked out of the projects because their kid is alleged to have smoked marijuana. Somebody's kicked out of school because they get caught with a little bit of weed on them. Now they can't even apply for financial aid. Seeing homes be destroyed by it ended up being a powerful tool when we were working to legalize it. So in New York, the law is called the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act that legalizes adult use cannabis. And we called it marijuana on purpose, understanding the negative connotations, understanding the racism that came with marijuana, because we wanted the stories to come out. Big Pharma had tried to create the Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act, which failed. It wasn't until people started hearing these stories. There was a state senator by the name of Liz Kruger, who was right outside of the Lower East Side, and she had from 14th Street to the Upper East Side, and she said, listen, when I walk through my neighborhoods, I smell it. I see people using it. I see them at the parks. I see cops, but I don't see the cops bothering them. If I cross over the street and I start walking towards the Lower East Side, it's a different story. I'm seeing cops treating people different. And what we started to do was, through this organization called Drug Policy Alliance, DPA, great organization working to eradicate the war on drugs, they started to basically use the Freedom of Information laws to get information on each precinct in New York State. So we started requesting everyone who got arrested for simple possession on a weekly basis. That turned into being able to kind of put together a large piece of a puzzle that showed that 89% of individuals over a 20-year period were either Black or brown who had a simple possession of marijuana conviction. Understanding that whether you're green, orange, or purple, people use drugs at a similar rate. So if people are using drugs at a similar rate, then there must be the enforcement is not being played equally.
Absolutely.
So understanding that if you're talking about over 600,000 people with convictions, 4,000 collateral consequences to that simple possession of marijuana conviction, and understanding that if you go through the court system, you're going to pay fees, then we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, that were taken away from our community just for a simple possession of marijuana, right? Somebody lost their job, somebody lost their home, somebody had to pay at least $100. And if you do $100 times 600 and something thousand, then you're already, in the 10-figure range. So that became powerful, and people started to listen and say, like, wait, this is really happening? Because for many people in a state like New York, they don't understand what happens in Arbor Hill, right? They don't understand what happens on Avenue D and 4th Street in Manhattan. They see what they know to be true in their community, right? And if in their community they're lighting up a joint and they're walking and they see the cops and the cops don't bother them, they presume that that's the way for everybody else. But it's not. It's usually a way in our community that is used to undermine people, right? Or to get them into the system or to do something else to them. And being able to share those stories, making people realize, like, do you think cannabis or marijuana is more dangerous than crack? Crack is a Schedule I drug. Cannabis is considered a Schedule I drug, right? And when you look at federal convictions, they'll drop somebody selling cocaine, but if they get caught with weed, they're going to be like, nah, we want the weed charge, we'll drop that because the weed gets you more time. So being able to use those stories in an authentic way, right? Because the hard part about getting to where we're getting is that we'll never forget where we came from and how we got there, and those who we've met along the way who may have not had those same situations. But when you go back home and you ask somebody to tell your story or tell their story, they'll tell you their story. But if I go to your neighborhood and be like, yo, tell me your story, they're going to look at me crazy.
Absolutely.
If not, they're going to try to stall on me, right? And it's the same thing, vice versa, if you go to a neighborhood that's not yours and you try to get that. So it was really a community effort from Suffolk County to Erie County to pass the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. And what we wanted to do was make sure 3 different things. Those who were directly impacted and had a conviction, we wanted those convictions removed. Second, we wanted the communities that were most impacted by it to be the biggest beneficiaries of it. So about 1/3 of the tax revenue that comes in goes directly to those communities. The third bucket we wanted ownership. We didn't want people to come in and give the spiel, we're going to get you a good job. No, we don't want jobs. We want to be able to create generational wealth, understanding that a state like New York is the largest consumers of cannabis.
Mm.
New York uses more cannabis than California, than Denver, than any other state. So when you start doing the math, New York is estimated year one to sell about 1 million pounds.
Mm.
An eighth goes for, let's call it $50. So that means 8 times 50 gets you to an ounce, right? So you got to keep doing the math. You're like, okay, so now 400 times 8 times 16 equals the pound. Times 1 million gets you to, now we're in $1 billion industry just in New York State alone.
Easy.
Right. So now, how do we divide that pie? Well, people from the outside were saying those who have the most experience should lead the way. Through advocacy efforts, we were able, and advocates alike were able to say, well, those who have the most experience are those who've been arrested for selling it. You might understand the California market, you might understand Denver's market, but New York's market is completely different. And why are we going to let somebody have access to this capital when we know that we need to remedy past harms, namely 89% of individuals with simple possession of cannabis that have been targeted and have been directly impacted by it. So what they ended up doing was creating a conditional retail adult use license, and folks who have business experience, and I think that's the most important part. They want people to have business experience and have a positive book of business for at least 2 years, and then have a conviction, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that are involved. They want them to get first right in the state.
There you go.
Right, and it's either you, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent. So where we are right now is there are more than a handful of dispensaries that have opened up. Many of them are doing extremely well, but the real winners are the communities, right? You take this negative connotation of something that people were embarrassed about. You know, I have a client who he had a restaurant, he had a liquor store, he was doing well. He got caught with some weed, ended up on Rikers Island, had to lose his liquor license because he has a Schedule I drug conviction.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, so it was like stuff like that. But now where it's like he was one of the first people to get a license and he's preparing to open up his own shop, is like, yo, this is really a real opportunity, right? Yeah. It's an opportunity because he knows the community. So he's hiring people who understand that community too and respect that community. It's not this idea of us versus them, but us helping us, right? So that has been pretty dope to kind of see. And why I got in it is just, you know, when I was in education, I saw students, you know, lives changing, right? They can't apply for financial aid because they got caught with a little bit of weed, or they're alleged to have had a little bit of weed. When I was clerking for a judge, we had someone come before us who was arrested for having drug paraphernalia. And thankfully, I worked for a judge at the time who was no nonsense, but the person had Visine. You know, that was the drug paraphernalia. It wasn't backwards. It wasn't a blunt. It wasn't like you had a cop saying, yo, listen.
The eye drops?
The eye drops.
They didn't say that was paranoid.
They did, right? And they charged him with drug paraphernalia. And you know, we were able to be like, this is BS, this doesn't belong here. The prosecutor agreed and kind of shooed up the cop. But the cop was basically like, yo, this person's in a high crime area. We know the area. The only reason he has these drops is because he doesn't want us to know that he's high. Right? But when you see those things happening, and that kid didn't do anything wrong, but now that adult now wanted to work with you in the federal government, that kid would have to explain why he was arrested and charged with possession of drug paraphernalia, even if he wasn't convicted. And how many people are going to believe that person's story when they say, I have Izine, and it was just an over-policed neighborhood?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. I love, thank you for your advocacy. I'm smiling because on the inside, I know how important it is, right? And earlier you talked about how it wasn't until legislators started to hear the actual stories, the impact statements, right? That, you start to put lives, communities with the direct effects of what's happening, right? And we need advocates like you. We need advocates who are doing work similar to what you're doing and who are passionate about the communities in which they serve. So I'm smiling because I understand how big it is, and I'm smiling because I know that it comes genuinely from a person who cares and wants to see other people win. So we need we need more of you out there.
This way, if you just have, we have a family-owned group that just got a license in Suffolk County, and where they're from in Suffolk County is similar to like our neighborhoods. Is a father, a daughter, a wife, the godfather's son. Life's changed because of this. Now they have access to, sky's the limit. You go from making whatever you were making, even if you were making a solid salary where most of the people are not, to, this is really, when you think about the formula that I gave earlier, a dispensary in a high populated location should really be making 8 figures. So you go from being somebody who the family may have shrugged off. You go from somebody who had to open up your own business and struggle because nobody else wanted to give you an opportunity, so you created your own lane, to now saying, I could make in this business, I could bring in, 8 figures, $10 million, $20 million a year. That changes lives instantly.
Everything.
You know what I mean? You're talking about, if you're in Albany, you can easily make 7 figures with the right team in a place where the average salary is like 40 grand a year.
Yep.
That's significant. You know what I mean? That's like having LeBron James come and play a game so that way you could tax him on his salary. But now it's just this dispensary. So now you have this star power in resources for your schools, for after school programs, for reentry programs. But more importantly, you're going to have real paying jobs because people are going to look out for their own. You know what I mean? They're not, in theory, they shouldn't be such where it's like, here, we're going to give you, people are making 40 grand, so we're going to give you 40 grand doing this. Like, what we're seeing is that people are taking care of folks and giving them real living wages, providing them real benefits, and making sure that everybody eats together.
Nice. It's making me think about how they do the schools nearby, wherever there's a lottery winner, right? And proceeds from that lottery winner always go to those schools that are close by or whatever. And it was just saying that these communities that have been impacted are benefiting from the creation of these new facilities. And I love it. I love it because we don't always see it turn out this way. Most times it's our communities being taxed. Most times it's our communities being robbed. And most times it's our communities not being able to take advantage of it. And I know some people who, have gone in for weed charges and who are now going through that whole process of getting themselves legitimately acclimated to benefit from it. So just even to hear your numbers, it lets you know how big it is, and it lets you know how big it will continue to be. And this is just in year one, right? The first, what is it? Up in Albany, I think they just launched the first what do you call it? Delivery
Dispensary.
service. Yeah,
Yeah.
delivery service. Yeah. So, but yeah. Okay. Out of a question, side note, out of all of the areas of law that you have touched your hand in, what has been the most exciting for you?
So probably right now I have a case where I'm suing the court system. I'm suing the New York State court system in a class action for failing to provide language access to defendants in criminal proceedings. So specifically what's going on in Rockland County, and Rockland County is a predominantly Haitian and
Absolutely.
Spanish speaking community. So if you go to one of the town courts on a criminal case, and you're eligible for a diversion program. The diversion program is a program that says, we'll pause this criminal case and you complete this program through this court and we'll act like this never happened. So you have no conviction. You don't have to worry about losing your job. You don't have to worry about financial aid. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. What that court did was they said, well, we only give people who speak English that court. So I think the most fulfilling is probably having to do that case, because it really tests where your heart is. And when I say that, I'm suing the state of New York and I'm suing specifically the court system, presumably a place where I have to go to again, right? Like it's like you really have to test your gut and be like, nah, you can't let this slide. And I think they've been letting stuff go on for so long because most lawyers are going to worry about like what happens. Like they're going to, they might target me. They might, something else might happen. And just being able to be, again, true to yourself and authentic and just say like, listen, they're messing with our people. What's the sense of having this degree if I'm just going to let them mess with our people?
Okay. Once again, man, shout out to you for that one. Because we've seen through history that, who you choose to advocate for definitely has repercussions for the person that is advocating for that, for those people as well. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing. How did you, last law question for a second, but what made you partner up and actually open up your own firm? What was it about the experience that said this was the next step for me in my area of law?
Again, that kind of like entrepreneurial spirit, just understanding that, like it's not rocket science. People need to have access to attorneys who they can trust. They need attorneys who are going to do good work for them. They need attorneys who are going to be amongst them. And I opened up shop with someone who I had worked with before and who was a partner at a large law firm. And rarely does anyone who looked like us make it to partner, but she did. And I was a director at a legal defense fund out of DC, doing voting rights cases and democracy cases. And prior to that, I had worked on a whole bunch of different civil rights cases. And just understanding that I need to bet on myself, right? I was getting $20 million verdicts. I was getting settlements for 8 figures on my civil rights cases. I was making it on CNN. I was getting featured here, getting featured there. And it was just like, well, if I could do this for a legal defense fund, then certainly I could do it on my own, and make sure that I could take whatever kind of cases that I want to take. And, similar to you, I'm fortunate to be married and have a wife who supports me. I was just like, I was like, hey, this is my plan. She was like, I need to see something in writing. So I was like, it's like, what? She's like, yeah. Like, what's your plan? Like, let me hear it. What are you going to do? Like, okay, like, what's this going to look like? What's that going to look like? And steel sharpens steel. So being able to have Ayanna by my side to challenge me even in that, like, yeah, I support you. I want you to do it right. But you need to put something on paper. You need this, like, where's your weaknesses? Where do you see this? How is this going to end up where you want it to be? and being able to kind of go through that before opening shop has been beneficial. Now we have, we're at 111 Washington Avenue, which is dope because I was speaking with one of our frat brothers, Mike. I took Mike to the office. Mike was like, yo, this is crazy. He was like, yo, I was a teller at Citizens Bank, which used to be down here. Now, you know what I mean? Now you got an office, you letting me in on a Sunday and showing me around space where that wasn't supposed to be the case.
Facts.
So we took an idea and now have 4 different offices, 2 in New York, 1 in New Jersey, and another in Florida. And it's really just doing good work, but also making sure that you're true to yourself and that you're serving people in a way that you would want to be served, right?
Okay. All right. Let me dive into the younger version of Jorge for a second, because a lot of people will see where you are today and the long list of accomplishments that you've already have garnered. And we're going to help you get that other one out here in New Jersey pretty soon too, man. I'm going to add this link for people to vote for you for that one in New Jersey in the bottom of this video as well. But thinking about the younger Jorge, what is something you wish someone would have told the younger version of yourself that you now know through years of experience and maturity, but you might not have known back then? And the reason why I ask is because I want people to see us in these stories. I want people to recognize that there's nothing about you that somebody else cannot go out and accomplish the same things. But oftentimes, we may not always be confident enough to follow that. So thinking about your younger self, what is something you wish someone would have told the younger version of you?
It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to have pain, and just kind of figure out how to manage that pain, how to manage that anger, instead of just kind of being like, yo, it is what it is. Like, we're just going to get it, on to the next. I think that one of the things that's helped me get to where I'm at is being able to use that hurt and those experiences that come with that hurt to make sure that other people aren't hurt in the same way, or making sure that we humanize folks and we're not being judgmental, and that we're not making it seem like, just because you're from lineable houses that you don't want to have a job. Many times people are working 2-3 jobs, or just because you're on a corner doing something is because you have no dreams, you have no desires, you don't want to do anything else. Most people who are on the streets in the legacy market aren't on the streets in the legacy market because they want to, right? Like, there's no 401k, there's no pension plan, there's no even opening up bank accounts for the most part. And I started out with that earlier, seeing people go through a court system who I knew had money to get bailed out, but didn't have a legitimate means to get them out. So they ended up staying in. So looking back to like a younger Jorge, I would just say like, yo, you know what? It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to have doubt. I didn't graduate high school till I was 19. I would say like 95, I kind of joke around and say I went on sabbatical. You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, nah, school ain't for me. I'll catch y'all when I catch y'all. And, and it wasn't that school was hard or anything like that. It was just more of the thing that
priorities.
I didn't see myself with, and I didn't see myself within the teachers, right? The teachers didn't look like me. They didn't care about me. The stuff that we were studying wasn't anything that I cared about. And I needed to learn how to channel my energy in a different way that allowed me to realize a system is a system is a system, right? So if I could get through junior high school, then I could get through high school. And I want to pause there because I know you have a large following of young folks and people who are educators or deal with younger people together. One of the things that I always want to highlight for folks is that high school to me was the hardest education I had. Right? Like, I had to show up to school every day, 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. and I couldn't leave the building. We weren't allowed to like leave for lunch or anything like that. Versus college, I went to college, and you're talking about 12 to 15 hours a week I was in class. You're giving me a syllabus that outlines when I'm going to have an exam, when a paper is due, when I need to read something. I thought it was cheating because I was used to an educational system that was telling me, you know, teachers were gonna you. They're gonna try to give you a surprise quiz, a surprise test, and then they wanted to get you tripped up on something where it was just like, yo, college is really simple if you could get there. But in order to get there, it's a hard journey because, you know, you're going through different comings of the ages. You're in junior high school, you know, you're going through puberty, you start high school, and then, you know, people are talking at you, you may feel confined, and you have to sit down for 7 to 8 hours a day while people are talking to you, and then they expect you to perform. Is a lot versus when you go to college, especially if you go away, you know, you don't have those outside factors, but also you go from a 40-hour school week, whereas like 40 hours people trying to teach you or talk at you, to, you know, on average 12 to 15 hours a week. That's a huge difference. You know, that means 3 hours a day. If I do it every day, 5 days a week, I'm in class versus, you know, those 40 hours, and it makes the world of a difference.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I appreciate you stopping there because, you know, I always say kids in the inner city are some of the most gifted kids that you will ever meet in your life, right? But a lot of people, for whatever reasons, don't understand the complexities that come along with what they gotta face on a day-to-day basis. Like you said, you were in school for all of these hours, right? And on top of being in school for all of these hours, you know, I gotta think about what my environment is like when I come outside of the school. I gotta think about what my environment is like inside the school. I gotta think about what my home life is like outside of the school.
I'll give you a real story real quick. When I was in high school, I worked at Sam Goody. I always loved music. I'm a huge hip hop head to this day. So I keep getting calls at work, meaning the phone line. This is, I think this is 99. It might be 2000, but I don't have a cell phone, so they calling me at work. And the manager's like, yo, like, you never get calls. You're getting calls like crazy. What's going on? I was like, yo, my friend got shot in the head. They calling to give me updates. And, you know, the lady was just like, you got a friend and your friend was shot in the head? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, got shot in the head. Like, it wasn't abnormal to know somebody who, you know, a crime was committed on or got caught up in a situation. And I say that because, you know, the teacher, the manager knew like something didn't seem right with me. I maybe was in a different kind of mood, but I went through the whole school day. Ain't not one teacher asked me how I was feeling or noticed anything, you know what I mean? And then I got to go and walk right through the same place where my man's blood is still on the concrete when I walk home and I get off the bus to get home, right? So those are things that a lot of people would overlook, but you look at those experiences and that kind of builds a different level of resilience, where it's just like, no means not now if you're trying to accomplish something, right? And being able to have the persistence, you know what I mean, makes the world of a difference. Because these young people, they're going through a lot, but if you're not going to be real to what you went through, you know, like our parents' generation, they weren't talking about what they went through. You know what I mean? Me and my pops still ain't telling me what he went through. You know what I mean? Like, is it like whatever, right? But I think our generation to be like, yo, like, I know what it's like to get beat up by the cops. I know what it's like to get stopped. I know what it's like to be profiled. I know what it's like to have even a teacher question whether you did something because they look at you and think that, how could you write this? How could you be able to create whatever it is that you're creating, right? And I think that those are things that we need to amplify within our community through these stories. And I think that's why a platform like the Black community is needed, because folks need to understand that they're not alone. But in order not to be alone, then they need to be able to have something that they could visualize or at least hear. So kudos to you for putting this together. You know, and for those who haven't picked up Just a Kid from Arbor Hill, then you slip and you need to go get that. And then if you outside of the metro area, then you need to make sure you reach out to your librarians and tell your librarians they need to pick it up and actually order it.
Nice. I got a call yesterday from a young guy we used to mentor up there, who just started reading the book. And to your point, he was just saying that you're just like, I'm glad you wrote this, Rel. And he said, because I can finally see myself in your book. I can see myself as like, yeah, obviously it's your story, but I went through the same thing, right? Man, it's just like people need to see it. So to your point, we're more transparent now than we ever been. We can talk about things that we've never talked about before, from finances to therapy to all of these different things that'll give more well-rounded people. But you have to be forthcoming with that information.
You do, and you got to be comfortable telling that story. But we were fortunate enough that we're able to process those stories and had others that created books. I mean, one of the first conversations we had when we met, we was talking about books, you know what I mean? And that's something that most people, I wish more people did, you know what I mean? And then we started talking about the pack. And he was like, yo, you know about these brothers?
Seton Hall.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, this guy put this, that. And I was like, yeah, Ro, you need to do your book. He's like, yeah, you need to do yours. And then even, reading 50 Cent's first book, From Pieces to Weight, you know what I mean? And understanding what was going on in New York at that time and having a different mindset than that, because like you said, the same thing that happens with books or music is the same. You can listen to it more than once and get more things out of it. You could read it more than once and get multiple things out of it. But if we provide that opportunity for people to see themselves in whatever work we're pushing forward, then then our job is fulfilled, right?
Yeah. I like it, man. Let me see, man. I'm gonna take you. I want to take you through my rapid fire set of questions, right? So, one of the things I love about this platform is that I get to highlight you and showcase you in ways where some people may never get a chance to come and see this side of Jorge. So, I'm glad you said you're a huge music fan, because I got some music questions for you too. But this is my rapid fire questions for you. I'm gonna hit you with a dinger up front. Entertainment gossip. Should Lori Harvey had left Michael B. Jordan? Go.
Nah.
All right. Favorite sneaker. What is your favorite sneaker of all time? You can give me a brand too if you want.
Nah. So I'm a huge sneakerhead. I collect a lot of Jordans, but Jordans by far are not like my favorite sneaker of all time. None of them are, right? Like I get them because when I was a kid, I couldn't have them. But keeping in that spirit of like if I had to pick like a favorite sneaker, it would probably be like a pair of Etonics, you know what I mean? And when I think of sneakers, I think of like Easter, because for me, like, growing up, it was like Easter was like it was your showcase. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna bring out the kicks, and it's gonna be the most fire pair of kicks. And I think like for me, like Easter in the '80s, it was like Etonics, Elise's, those kind of let the path. If you had those, you was doing it big.
He said Etonics. What?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Music wise, who's your favorite artist of all time? And I'm going to add a caveat to this one. I need to know the why. So who's your favorite artist of all time and why?
So I'm a huge Coogee rap fan.
4, 5, 6 is in the mix. I'm hitting them with trips. Hey, crack, time to get the bread black.
Mom's was a CNA, Pops was a so like I think he fathered a lot of people's styles, and I think his music is classic. Like you can listen to something that he did in '89 and play it today, and people be like, yo, who's that? What's that? And it was just like, so I would say G Rap. I would say outside of like, I would probably say G Rap, and I would say he was most influential because he was talking about stories that other people weren't talking about and wasn't necessarily glorifying. Like he wasn't bigging himself up for it. He was just venting. You know what I mean? It was just like, yo, it was all right to talk about what you're going on through. It's cool. So
Oh,
I'm
look,
gonna say
I would have
that.
never suspected that one, but that's a good one, man. I like. Listen, in my Sony, I used to keep that. I What's the name of that album? Was it 4, 5,
It's four,
6?
five, six. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Four,
yeah.
five,
Listen,
six
I
is
used
the
to
album.
keep
Yeah.
that. I used to keep that in my Sony because I was a huge gambler back then. So man, CeeLo was my game. But yeah, okay. Shout out to Akuji Rap on that one. Let me see. Favorite uh, a favorite actor of all time.
Wow. I'm probably gonna go the easy route and pick somebody like Denzel. I
Mm,
think one, Denzel looks like us, but two, he's been able to play from like Glory
mm,
to, Training Day. Is like he's been able to progress, right?
mm.
And I think I also enjoy watching what he does outside and the opportunities he's provided. And then now as a husband and seeing like this dude is a husband, what he's been
Yep,
able to do, he's not in the streets, he's not in anybody's, you know what I mean,
yep.
negative conversations. I think Denzel.
I love it. I love it for that amount of time too,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, a lot of people may have they may have the game on lock for a small period of time, but his level of consistency, his dedication to the craft. I mean, okay, that's a good one. Final question from Rapid Fire, because I can learn a lot about a person from what movies you watch, to what music you listen to what food you eat. So what's your favorite cheat meal?
Oh
What's
man,
your
I love.
go-to? What's your go-to? What makes you happy?
So I'm going to cheat again, man. This part of it is just being a father. So I'm going to say pizza. My little
Mm.
man loves pizza. He gets man happy. Like delivery guy comes, he's like jumping up pizza. Like it's Friday, pizza on Friday. Today's Thursday, tomorrow Friday. It's like that level of joy. But is the neighborhood classic. Like I could walk through the
Mm,
street eating a slice of pizza, the grease is falling down. You know what I mean? Everybody got a story. You got a
mm.
new outfit on, cheese grease fall. You want to be mad, but the slice still tastes good. You want
Yep.
to keep eating it. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm gonna go with like give me some good pizza and I'm happy.
Okay, I appreciate that too because my boys over here, especially my two younger ones, love pizza. So, and what's crazy is that we go to Costco like it seems like every other day over here. Kids are gonna send us to the poorhouse, but they love Costco pizza, and I love Costco pizza now. It's just like wow, Costco pizza is delicious. But every Friday we do McDonald's. So if they have a good week at school. We don't get any negative reports from them. Their treat is McDonald's. I know some people out there like, oh, you could do better than that. Don't give them McDonald's. Hey, they like what they like, and I'm just happy that we're in positions to be able to reward them for doing some of the things that we never got rewarded for doing. I remember reading a lot when I was a kid, and they had those RIF certificates. Reading is
Mhm.
fundamental certificates, and you can get a free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. So I used to read all the Goosebumps books and stuff like that, but we didn't have a car, right? So we could never go to any of these places to go get
So
the
I was
pizza.
about to say I'm jealous of you because we ain't have none either. You know what I mean? We didn't have any of those where you could go do this and you get the certificate and go get
Yep.
some.
Yep, and that's what discouraged me from stop. I stopped reading because I said, "What am I going to keep reading these for if I can never get this personal pan pizza?" So when the kids have a good week, it's part of the reward system. Is like we're blessed to be in a different situation for them, and I just love being able to be active and present for it. So. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me in my randomness over here. I'm going to get back to the seriousness for you because this is my favorite question, probably of all 3 seasons. Um, Everyone has their own definition of success. Jorge, for you, if you were to define success, what does success look like for you?
For me, success is overcoming failure, whatever failure is. So somebody might say, "Hey, you're successful," or "You won this," and that's that's successful, right? Like, yo, you nominated for 2 awards. Like, how did you do this? Or, you know, you wrote a brief to the Supreme Court of the United States. How does that feel? But they don't see like, you know, I shot 100 times before I got to that part. You know, it wasn't necessarily the glorifying it or the idea like something good was going to happen out of it. It was this idea of like there was some kind of resistance there, and it required me to challenge myself. And giving my all, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I kept persisting, and maybe I did a slight pivot and was able to overcome what in my mind was a failure, right? And that's how I define success. I define success as being able to overcome failure. But I also think that, you know, success is within each person's category, right? Like being able to get up and earn for your family, like that's success. You know what I mean? Like being able to pick up the phone and do something, because, you know, it takes a lot to just leave out the house these days, or go and do whatever it is that you said that you were going to do, keeping your word. Right now, I'm at the point where my parents are old, so it's like I have a toddler, and then I have, you know, senior parents, and it was just like, if I tell my moms are going to go and do something, guess what? I need to go do it, because she's going to be disappointed in the same way that my toddler would be if I said, for example, we're going to have pizza, or Friday comes and he doesn't have pizza as an option. Like, I'm not trying to see that. So I think, you know, I define success as being true to your word in part, and being able to overcome whatever failures are. Because some people might say like, yo, you didn't fail, you did great. Like you went and did this, but it's for you, right? Like it's your own standard.
Okay. I love it, man. Yeah. And most people don't look at failure, overcoming failure as, you know, they'll look at the end result when they get there, that's success. But the resiliency, the not giving up, the continuous fight, the continuous belief. Shout out to you. 2 more questions for you. I'm letting you go.
No doubt.
Thinking about your life's path up until this point, everything that you've experienced, what about your life's path are you most proud of?
It would probably be, that's a great question, and like super loaded too. Shout out to you for that one. Yeah, I'm gonna say not forgetting where I came from and not turning my back on folks. You know, like I still go to church in the neighborhood. I'm an elder at the church I grew up at. I, you know, provide countless free legal things, and not that means or breaks anything to folks who don't. But I think being able to give back is probably it, right? Like looking at all the paths is just being able to give back.
Okay. All right. And my last question for you would be, I like to know what motivates other people, right? This entire podcast was created to highlight the fact that there's a lot more positive people out in the world than we know of, because we're always bombarded with negativity. But who inspires you? Like, where do you go to get your motivation? Are you listening to a podcast? Are you reading particular books? Where do you get your inspiration from that allows you to do the work day in and day out?
I would say my family's journey is probably the biggest motivating factor. The fact that I could, you know, say 3 generations ago, my great grandmother, right? So it's my mother, her mother, her mother's mother, and knowing that, you know, she lived to 111, and understanding she was born in the 1800s, lived through the 1900s, died in 2004, and seeing how people were treating her, right? Like this idea of like not treating an elder like an elder resonates. This idea of because she doesn't speak English, she's treated a certain kind of way resonates. This idea of, you know, she provided and took a risk and gave up her life to make sure that we had a shot in New York resonates. And then certainly now being a father is like, I just don't want to disappoint the people who I love, bro. You know what I mean? Like that's really it. Like I want to be able to make my wife proud, to make my son proud. I want to be able to, my mom to be like, yo, that's my son. When we walking through the neighborhood, like you're like, yeah, of course I know. I was just with him. I mean, like it's just like that. That's really it. That's like the motivating factor. Is like, yo, I woke up today. Woke up for a reason. I got to get something done. You know what I mean? Or I got to get a step closer to getting something done.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, man, Jorge Vasquez Jr., Mr. Esquire himself, thank you for providing me your time. Bro, I couldn't wait to tell your story. Like I said, I knew it would be so impactful, which is why I said early last year that I wanted you for this, the finale. So thank you for gracing the stage and for blessing the stage with your story. Please continue to be an advocate. I'm going to use your own word because I would want to be represented by you. I would want to be represented by somebody who expresses the passion and the desire to give me a fair chance. So thank you for the work that you do individually. Thank you for the work that your law firm is doing. And how can people find you if they were looking for you or your law firm on social media? I want to be sure to add that on here too.
Sure. So on social media is V as in Vasquez, S LLP Law. So the website is vsllplaw.com. On social media or platforms is at VSLLP Law. My personal social media is at Jorge Jorge, Vasquez VASQUEZNY or NYC. I use both. Yeah, and it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you to the BAT community. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, listen, the pleasure was all mine, man. Thank you. I can't wait to get your story out to the people. Have a great rest of the week to you and the family. And I hope little man gets pizza on Friday.
Yeah, he will.
yeah, man. I'll probably catch up with you later.
All right, take care. Thanks.
All right, peace.
My regards to the family.
Got you covered.
Keep climbing up the ladder. A Black Lives Matter. It matter. So all you young people, give me all. 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 Matter. A Black Lives Matter. They matter. A Black Lives Matter.